Margot felt quite exquisite as she dipped her fries in mayo, gracefully extending her pinky to the sky. See, she had just saved by getting Cox Mobile for her family. Yes, more lines, more savings, Margot. Brilliant. She finished her cherry slush drink with a triumphant... Exquisite indeed. Visit a Cox store and pay as low as $30 a line for 4 or more unlimited lines. 4 lines required for $30 per line price, max of 5 lines. Prices exclude taxes, device activation and other fees and charges. Other restrictions apply.
When you're ready to pop the question, the last thing you want to do is second-guess the ring. At BlueNile.com, you can design a one-of-a-kind ring with the ease and convenience of shopping online. Choose your diamond and setting. When you find the one, you'll get it delivered right to your door. Go to BlueNile.com and use promo code WELCOME to get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. That's code WELCOME at BlueNile.com for $50 off your purchase. BlueNile.com, code WELCOME.
When it comes to teaching kids and teens about money, practice makes perfect. That's where Greenlight comes in. With a debit card and money app of their own, kids learn to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest. Parents send instant money transfers, create custom chores, and automate allowance, while kids track their spending, set savings goals, and practice money skills they can use today and for life. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.
Welcome to Haunting History, the podcast that reaches back into the past for the events that shocked everyone. Tales of true crime, mystery, and the macabre. And when we're lucky, the stories were true crime, history, and the paranormal meet. Now, who doesn't love a good ghost story, right? Welcome back to Haunting History Podcast. I'm your host, Kat. The German and literal definition of doppelganger is double goer, or the more often used term double walker. In German folklore, a doppelganger is referred to as an apparition of a living person, as distinguished from a ghost. The concept of the existence of a spirit double isn't new. There is an ancient and widespread belief that there is an exact double of every living being. But how much of it is myth or superstition, and how much of it is true and has been proven scientifically? If you go on Pinterest or Instagram or even Twitter and put in the hashtag doppelganger, you'll find photo after photo of people at airports and restaurants with smiling face by smiling face of a person they just met who looks like their spitting image. Since our most recent episode with Di from Missouri State Penn, I have been obsessed with finding out more about doppelgangers. I mean, I've heard the term and I knew loosely what it meant, but I'd never been interested in more than just a simple Google search. But after talking to her, which, by the way, completely creeped me out, not only by the stories at Missouri State Penn, but her description of them being quoted, unquote, flat, like no real expression or feeling. It reminds me of the ghost dummies used in Halloween mazes or decorations of ghosts without features. There are writings going back to the 1600s of people seeing the double of themselves or a loved one. The common belief is that if you see your double 3 times, it means that impending death is headed your way. If someone else saw your double, it meant that you would become very ill. Although the stories of doppelgangers were mostly in German writings back in the 1600s, there is an American account of a doppelganger I'd never heard of. There are stories of Abraham Lincoln seeing his doppelganger in his own mirror reflection. As he stood looking at himself, a face exactly as his own appeared right next to his. When it happened a second time, he tried to show his wife Mary, but it disappeared as quickly as it appeared. Scientists have a different viewpoint of doppelgangers. It's believed to be a form of heautoscopy, which is a hallucination in which one sees one's own body from a distance and may occur as a symptom of schizophrenia or epilepsy. And it goes on to say, autoscopic phenomena are psychic illusionary visual experiences consisting of the perception of the image of one's own body or face within space, either from an internal point of view, as in a mirror, or from an external point of view, as in an individual perceives their surrounding environment from a different perspective, from a position outside of their own body, having these distinctive characterizations: disembodiment, seeing oneself outside of one's body, or the impression of seeing the world from an elevated and distant perspective, which reminds me a lot of people who experience near-death experiences. Cases of autoscopy are commonly encountered in modern psychiatric practice, which may explain people seeing their own double, kind of like what people who meet and talk in this day and age and take pictures with their social media accounts. Those are living, breathing doubles. One I saw met her double, and they noticed that they both had very similar tattoos in the exact same place on their body, which frankly freaks me out a little bit. I'm not sure how fine it would be with meeting my double. Maybe that's a discussion for a more science-based podcast. Although I do want to mention it's actually being studied about how two people who are not related can not only have the same features, but oftentimes have the same. It certainly doesn't explain how others have seen a double of a friend or a loved one. Our guest this week is historian and author Brian Clune. So today we're talking to Brian Clune, author, historian extraordinaire. How many books have you written?
I have 13 that I've written. 12 are out right now, and the 13th is supposed to be coming out on the 28th, but I'm not holding my breath because it was originally supposed to come out last May, and then they keep changing the release date. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it will be this month.
And what is that one?
It is Dark Tourism, California. It's actually a little book that was a Barnes & Noble requisition, and it was kind of fun to do. They only gave me a month to write it. I managed to get it in under deadline, and if it is released this month, it will be 26 months since I gave it to them. So I'm mad at them.
And then what's book 14?
Well, actually, right now I'm working on 2 Hollywood-centric books. One of them is Murder and Mayhem Hollywood, which is a true crime book. And I'm also working on Ghosts and Legends of Hollywood.
Oh, nice. That would be my favorite, I would say.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
There's a lot in Hollywood.
That is an understatement.
Right.
Although I am trying to find some more obscure locations rather than rehashing all of the old
ones.
standbys. Yeah.
Right.
So that's taking a little bit more time, but I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Ever since I did, so I know what doppelgangers are, and I pre-recorded a little opening that I actually sent to you, but I've heard the term for, 100 years. I don't know. I've always heard it. But until I did the episode of Missouri State Penitentiary, I really hadn't given it that much thought. And then I became slightly obsessed with the idea of a doppelganger. Now,
I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
Oh, that's different. Go ahead.
In the intro that you sent me, you had stated that the person you had been talking to about the prison was saying that there were a lot of doppelgangers at the prison, and I was really curious about that. What did she mean that there were a lot of doppelgangers there?
A lot of sightings of a doppelganger, and on more than one occasion, they had seen a guard or a security person that they knew wasn't on the property at the time.
Now, that's really kind of interesting because that may be more of something I ran across as far as by location rather than being an actual doppelganger. And that's why I was wondering about, what kind of doppelgangers they were seeing, whether it was supposed doppelgangers of people who had passed away there or of people who were still living.
In some instances, I think it's been both. But the one story that I heard specifically was a security guard that still works there, that people, more than one person had seen who they thought was him. And then they find out later he either wasn't there at all or he was in a completely different area of the prison or the penitentiary.
Gotcha. Now, I did, during the research, run across a lot of semi-famous cases of possible bilocation rather than doppelganger activity.
So when you see that, do you think that's more like of a residual thing, like someone left an imprint in that area?
That's possible, but there's a couple cases where it was Catherine the Great of Russia. At one point, her guards saw her on her throne, and the doppelganger didn't respond. so the guards went to Catherine the Great, who got upset, ended up going to the throne room, saw her own doppelganger there, ordered the guards to shoot at the doppelganger, which, obviously did nothing but put holes in her throne, at which point it just disappeared. Now, that could be a case of bilocation where Catherine the Great herself, she was very, shall we say, enamored of herself. Right. And always loved to picture herself on the throne. So she could have actually been projecting her own image onto her throne while sitting in her room thinking about herself, if that makes sense.
Like manifesting image
exactly.
of herself?
Exactly. There's actually a really famous case.
Wait, before you get into that, didn't Catherine the Great die of a stroke soon after?
She did. She did. And that goes to it being an actual doppelganger rather than bilocation. So that one has kind of aspects of both folklore and the mythos of the doppelganger.
Right.
But there's actually a case that took place back in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s, of a school teacher by the name of Emily, and I'm not sure of the pronunciation, Sagee is what I believe it to be. It's Sagee. And by all accounts, this woman was, just a fantastic teacher. But she had been fired from 18 different jobs, teaching jobs, and could never figure out why. Well, when she went to her last job, she was doing great, but then the students would actually see a vision of her behind her. An exact duplicate of, in other words, a doppelganger. But this doppelganger would mirror everything she was doing. They couldn't hear the doppelganger, but they could see by the lip movements of the doppelganger that the doppelganger was basically mimicking everything she was saying, everything she was doing, almost as if it was a mirror image. But then over time, it started to appear when she was out of the room. So at one point, she was called out into the hallway by the principal. As soon as she walked out of the room, her doppelganger appeared sitting in her chair behind her desk until she came back into the room. And over time, it got, I don't know if worse is the proper term, but people would start seeing her in her classroom grading papers, even though she was out in the garden tending to her flowers. And it finally got to be so distracting that she was called into the office and fired. So this would have been her 19th time being fired, but at least this time they actually told her why she was being fired. And it's not really said what she did after that, but that almost to me seems more of a bilocation rather than a doppelganger. Now, the strange thing about this is everybody else could see this doppelganger except her. She never did see it. She never knew it was there.
But why do you say it's bilocation if it was in every job she had, like every different location?
Because, and this is my belief, of course, but because when it was seen mimicking her. In other words, if her right hand moved, the doppelganger's right hand moved in the exact same way. If she sat down, the doppelganger would sit down. It would mouth the same words that she was saying at the time. So it was almost as if she unknowingly, psychically projected an image of herself to her class at the same time that she was performing the same actions. Now, with her walking out into the hallway and almost immediately her doppelganger sitting down in the chair and basically just looking at the kids, not interacting with the kids, and as I said, this is my own theory, that she had projected herself there to keep an eye on the kids because she had stepped out. When she was grading the papers, the other people could see it, and she was out in the garden tending to the garden. And who knows, maybe she was thinking, I shouldn't be tending my garden, I should be in grading papers. So to me, it seems to be more by location than doppelganger activity.
I feel like I've read somewhere too that a doppelganger can take on like a poltergeist behavior.
I hadn't really found much in the way of poltergeist activity in relation to doppelgangers, but doppelgangers. So we know that doppelgangers were always known as bringing omens of death and just bad luck and things like that. But as far as poltergeist activity, the closest I've heard to that would be when the doppelganger was trying to, this is going to sound weird, but trying to drive its human counterpart insane, would actually go to its human counterpart's friends, family, pretend to be them, get the person into a lot of trouble. Then when the family members would come to the human counterpart, naturally the human counterpart didn't know what the heck was going on, saying, look, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. The doppelganger then would go to its human counterpart and try to convince them, yes, it was you, you just don't remember. But I was there, I saw you do it. Thereby trying to drive its human counterpart insane to get it committed so the doppelganger could then take over that person's life. That is the closest in any of the research. And granted, I haven't delved. There's a lot more I don't know about doppelgangers, but that's the closest so far that I've come to any type of doppelganger mischievous acts by a doppelganger.
Yeah, because there's so many stories in history about doppelgangers. I was kind of surprised.
Well, yeah, and one of the things that I found fascinating is doppelganger, and you said it in your intro, it's basically a German folktale, but there are other people that believed it as well. The Egyptians had their version of a doppelganger, which is granted a bit different than what an actual German doppelganger would be, called a Ka, or a spirit spark. And they believed that it was the doppelganger that would come out of one of their people and go on into the afterlife. So that was one of the reasons that for mummification and everything else, is they were trying to make the doppelgangers transition from life to death more pleasant and give it something concrete once it reached its final destination in the afterlife. You have the Celtic version, which is a fetch, and it's kind of an apparition of its living counterpart, and it was a bringer of bad omens as well, and usually would appear before a family member or a friend just before the person would die. Oh, and one of the weird things about the fetch, the Celtic version, if the fetch was actually seen in the mornings, it was actually a good omen that the person that it was the opposite of would have a long life. So that one sort of has two different aspects, which I found rather interesting. And then the Scottish had what is known as throws, and they were basically, we would most likely call them changelings. They believed that the fairies would have a sick child, and they would go to a human family who had just had a baby. They would switch their sick child for the healthy human child, take the human child to raise as a fairy, and the throw would then take on the shape, forms, mannerisms of the human child and look exactly like it until the sickness finally took it. So we have that one. And then also the Britons had, I cannot pronounce it, the Anku. And that one's a little bit weird because it would look exactly like their human counterpart, but then bringing death to their human counterpart, as soon as their human counterpart would pass away, the doppelganger or the Anku would actually become death itself, replete with the dark robes, the sky, the whole thing. But I just found it really kind of interesting that a lot of other cultures had their versions of a doppelganger.
Well, what is the difference between a doppelganger and a changeling? I mean, I know the whole folklore story of them switching the babies out, but in the grand scheme of things, what is the difference between the two? Like, isn't it kind of almost the same definition?
In a way, it all depends on if you want to classify or believe that a doppelganger is a fairy creature, a creature of fae. Now, one of the things that I ran across, which could conceivably connect the changeling with the doppelganger, is there is a belief among some of the Celtic religions that if a changeling grew up and didn't pass away due to its illness, that it could then come across its own doppelganger, or in this case, the human child that was stolen. Now, the changeling, not fully realizing that it was not the actual human child, would still be under the impression that it would see its own doppelganger, in this case, its own human version. And that's where the connection is that it's actually both. It's the changeling seeing its human counterpart, thereby going insane or having a bad omen from the human. It's kind of convoluted, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because if you Google, I just typed in changeling and started to type in verses, and it the first thing came up was doppelganger, changeling versus doppelganger.
Yeah.
Changeling is more restricted in terms of size, but can be substantially any human-shaped creature, regardless of the creature type. Well, a doppelganger can only turn into humanoids.
I didn't run across that, but that's an interesting theory.
Well, it's definitely a clear definition, but I guess,
yeah.
I mean, people so flippantly say, oh, I met my doppelganger, or I saw your doppelganger at the airport. But the sinister belief of doppelgangers and what initially was like rumored to be, or folklore, or whatever you want to call it, was that if someone saw your doppelganger, or you saw your doppelganger 3 times or more, it was an impending death. It wasn't anything else. Like, people now like take pictures like, oh, this person looks so much like me or whatever. But it was a very terrifying thing.
Right.
To see someone who looked exactly like you. But I think the thing that freaked me out most about what Di said, because she had seen what she believed to be a doppelganger, was the flatness of their features. And not physical flatness, but the fact that there was no feelings or expressions. It was the person's face that she knew it was this man's face, but there was no expression to it. It was very flat. The eyes were dead. The expression was, completely neutral. And I think that's what freaks me out the most.
Yeah, that one has always kind of made me wonder, because going a little bit further, some people have actually claimed that even though a doppelganger that looked like that was 3D, it wasn't actually 3-dimensional.
Right. It's like a vision of that person, but it's flat. It's not really like you can't walk up and hug it. It doesn't look like a human being, like at first glance, it looks like a human being walking there, but at closer inspection, it's very flat. It's clearly not real.
Right. Now, one thing I ran across as far as that goes is, and I cannot remember who it was that put the theory forth, was that doppelgangers in that particular case were doppelgangers who had not fully formed and taken on all of the characteristics of the person that they were, this is going to sound weird, becoming. So in other words, it was basically like a newborn doppelganger.
Well, like you're saying, like it was created to match someone. Like it wasn't like an instantaneous kind of thing. Like,
correct.
But they're trying to become that person. So like this, in this instance with Missouri State Penitentiary, this guard would have access to every place within inside the penitentiary. Was there a purpose of this doppelganger to become him so that he would have access to all these places, and why? Like what was the end for him? What was the purpose for him?
Well, see, and that's what we don't know is, first of all, if it is not by location and some otherworldly creature that is becoming a person, it's a matter of why are they becoming that person. So in the case of Abraham Lincoln, I know you mentioned him in the intro, Abraham Lincoln saw his own doppelganger in the mirror.
Right.
But he noticed that the features were not quite right. Now, his wife knew that, these were bad omens, and she was actually right because he was killed shortly after that. But in a situation like that, you would have to wonder, well, why was this doppelganger becoming Abraham Lincoln if it knew that Abraham Lincoln was going to be assassinated?
Well, now, it's the same with any doppelganger, right? Like if someone else sees your doppelganger like that, like not just I keep using the airport, but someone at the airport that looks like you. If someone sees a true doppelganger of you with like the flat expression, the seemingly to be 3D, but not really 3D, I mean, isn't that impending death anyways? Like, why are these doppelgangers here to warn? Are they here to cause havoc? Or is it, like some people say, your actual soul already leaving your body?
Well, I think I'd be a little careful about the soul leaving the body, because that denotes that you have basically given up your own soul and your own free will.
Okay, then not soul. Then what would the word terminology be? Like spirit leaving your body? Like,
well, to me, it would be the same thing. Okay. But everything I've read about doppelgangers, they do not have a soul per se. They do not have the same abilities as a human as far as feelings and things like that. Thank you. But while they are here, it is hard to fathom. Like in the case of them trying to drive a person insane so they get committed, it's so they don't have to go through the trouble of actually killing the person, but can then take over their life. It's the same thing with a lot of times we find that the doppelganger will start talking to its human counterpart and give advice that at the time sounds like good advice, but it's basically leading the human counterpart to do things that could either be deadly or could cause them to be thrown in prison, thereby getting rid of them. So it's almost as if the doppelgangers are there to take over a person's life, which is kind of counterproductive to the other part of the myth where it's an omen of death. So you kind of have to wonder whether there's two different aspects and possibly even two different versions of doppelgangers, because both of those myths come at the same time, which is really rather confusing when you delve deep into what doppelgangers are.
So technically, I don't know where I was going with this. I guess the fact that, having someone that looks like you is not a doppelganger. That's not like a real definition of a doppelganger. A doppelganger is a non-living being.
In mythology, yes. In modern terminology, we use doppelganger now almost casually to describe people who look like us.
Right.
Now, one of the things that I did find is that because humans have a relatively small gene pool, it's an almost guarantee that there is somebody on this planet somewhere that looks exactly like us.
Right.
And that just has to do with the fact that in some ways we have distant relatives that we have never met, never had any inkling of, that would be, duplicates of us,
right.
Genetic duplicates. Now, are those technically doppelgangers?
No.
No, but not as far as the mythos goes.
Right.
Now, one of the things that, and this kind of goes back to the whole flatness aspect, there have been a few people who have stated that they believe doppelgangers are now and always have been shadow people who have decided to take on the form of a human that they found interesting, or that they want to be able to use the likeness to their own ends. What those ends are, we don't know. I thought that was a rather interesting theory, especially since we don't know what shadow people actually are. In some ways, it makes a slight bit of sense.
Well, it takes it up like a level of creepiness too, because oftentimes people see shadow people and maybe don't even realize that they're seeing shadow people. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you keep seeing something out of the corner of your eye, and unless you're in a haunted location and you're looking for it, you just kind of tell yourself you're crazy. But if shadow people could somehow manifest themselves into being a doppelganger, that's freaking terrifying.
Yeah. And one of the things I was thinking about, where you have a lot of folks who have seen doppelgangers who have died shortly afterwards, we have all of these stories about a doppelganger trying to get a person out of the way without killing them. I've often wondered whether that is because they don't plan on being that person's double forever, and are just need them out of the way long enough to accomplish whatever strangeness that they need to accomplish being that person, if that makes sense.
No, the whole thing is really creepy when you really think about it. To me, like, doppelgangers are up there with some of the creepiest folklore or myths there are. And I feel like with every folklore, there's some shred of truth to them.
Generally speaking, yeah. Going back to the bilocation, and that possibly being have something to do with doppelganger activity. One of the ones that I found really rather strange took place in the 17th century, and some missionaries and explorers, they were some of the first to explore New Mexico, but they were also the first to explore the northern parts of New Mexico. They came across a Native American tribe who was already practicing Catholicism. And according to the natives, they were taught by a strange, mysterious blue lady. And that's a quote. So the missionaries themselves started asking the natives questions, and when they got back to Spain, they started trying to track down this mysterious blue lady, and they found a Sister Maria de Jesus de Agreda, And she actually admitted that she had been going to this strange land in her dreams, and had managed to bring crosses and other religious symbols, and had taught the Native Americans there Catholicism.
Okay,
But
so now you're bringing in another angle that people would be able to. That's like out of body experiences.
Right. She was actually tried for witchcraft. Luckily, she was acquitted, shall we say, during the Inquisition. But they had classified her spirit over in the New World as a doppelganger, not as a out-of-body experience, but as an actual doppelganger, which is how she was finally acquitted of being a witch. So
it's crazy, too. Are doppelgangers just us having experiences outside of our regular vessel?
Yeah, that's just it. But one of the things that I found kind of creepy, and there are some people who believe doppelgangers are a form of vampire, and because they do not have any reflection. So if a doppelganger is standing right next to you, you cannot see it in a mirror. You cannot see it in a puddle of water. You cannot see it reflected on any reflective surface.
Then how did Abraham Lincoln see it in a mirror? It wasn't a doppelganger?
And see, that there's the difference, though, because the doppelganger was not standing next to Lincoln. He was actually in the mirror. So it wasn't actually a reflection of the doppelganger. It was the doppelganger itself reflecting out of the mirror, not into the mirror, if that makes sense.
Something called that, like where people practice that. What is it called? What is it called?
Yeah.
What is that called?
It's a form of divination, if I remember correctly. But it's funny. I just heard the word a few days ago, and now I'm totally drawing a blank on it. But I know what you're saying, and I mean, I guess that's possible. You can always see a doppelganger in a mirror, but you can never see them in the mirror if they are with you.
Okay. That's just kind of crazy. Oh, I really want to know what that's called, though, and I can't find it. I feel like it was called something with an S. Scrying.
Oh, no. Scrying's a bit different. Scrying is basically looking into a scrying mirror or a scrying bowl that's filled with water, and not seeing yourself or seeing a doppelganger, but seeing future events, and not necessarily actually seeing the event as it is, but the person doing the scrying interprets what they're seeing in the scrying device.
So like a TV, like they're looking at a TV, but it's a mirror.
Kind of in a way, yeah.
So what's your final thoughts on doppelgangers? Real, not real?
You had to ask me that, huh?
Yeah.
So in modern terminology, I would say that doppelgangers exist and are our genetic duplicates. As far as...
And that's the less sinister version of it. That's really just the genetic pool.
Correct.
Okay.
As far as the mythological doppelgangers, there are so many different cultures that have a version of their doppelganger that I believe there has to be something that all of those cultures saw to make them create, if you will, these
name or definition.
Right. But what they truly are, I really couldn't tell you, although you do really have me interested to the point where I'm going to start doing some heavy research into the doppelganger phenomenon.
Yeah, let's do another episode if you find more information. I know that there was a scientist in Germany that was studying the genetics of real life doppelgangers, of people who lived and breathed and worked and had jobs and were real people and would meet their counterpart, like someone who looks just like them, that has the same mannerisms and everything of them. And they were finding a connection via genetics, like somehow, some way there was a very, very far and distant connection, but there was a connection.
Right.
But as far as like a scientific research into like doppelgangers that you see at places like Missouri State Penitentiary, or there's just so many stories of people seeing a doppelganger.
Right.
They're not real people. They're flat. They're not three-dimensional, but they're there. You see them just like you would a shadow person.
Right.
I don't know that there's been enough research on that.
Yeah, those are the ones that really kind of freak me out. But keep this in mind as well. A few years back, somebody had told me that they saw my exact double. And they said the person looked exactly like me. Now, I'm adopted, and I still do not have any idea who my biological father is or that side of the family. So there is a possibility that some of these doppelgangers are due to adoption and not knowing who our ancestors are, depending on how many years back or millennia back the adoptions took place.
Right.
So
that's crazy. I don't know. I think that in like the grand scheme of things, like things that I would be afraid of, like vampires or shadow people, creep me out.
Me as well.
I've never seen one, but I probably would prefer not to. Yours is high on my list of being really creepy.
Have you ever seen the Harry Potter movies?
Well, yeah.
So do you know what a Dementor looks like?
Oh, no. Should I look that up?
Oh, you can. But I did see something up at Virginia City that looked just like a Dementor. People tell me that what I saw was a shadow figure. But it was the creepiest thing I have ever seen, especially since it was jetting up the fire escape into my bedroom.
So was it just like a fog? Is that what you call it? Like a person-shaped fog?
It was a very dark shadow that was very long, and it looked just like a Dementor from the Harry Potter movies.
So like a shape to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's high on my list. That's high on my list. I almost think if I saw a full body apparition walking down the stairs, knowing full well that was an apparition and it was going to like dissolve before it got to the bottom of the stairs, would not scare me as much as seeing like one of those creepy shadow people that crawl on the floor.
I completely agree.
Like that's just almost like the movie Ghost with Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze.
Yeah.
Where like they come out of the ground and like slither and no.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, okay, ghosts, we know that they are just deceased humans. However, what one of these shadow figures or one of these flat, if you want to call them that, flat doppelgangers, or something like what I saw that was literally flying up a fire escape. Yeah, that is like, what the heck was that?
It just feels more evil. It feels more sinister. I mean,
exactly.
And I don't know what other word to use, like the word sinister, just to me kind of embodies exactly what I'm thinking. Something more sinister, something without our control that can maybe harm us or
exactly
in some way. So yeah, doppelgangers are big. Thanks so much for this.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for putting me on the trail.
And yeah, when you do a big speech about doppelgangers, you'll have to invite me.
I will, definitely. I can almost guarantee that this will be a talk I will give at the next Paracon. So.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah, then you definitely have to invite me.
Yeah, I most certainly will.
Okay, and then to get your books, they can go on Amazon and basically search Brian Clune.
Yep, just type my name into Amazon and my books will come up. Even the one that hasn't been released yet is up on Amazon, but don't hold your breath on when it might actually come out. That sounds bad, but...
Yeah, well, I mean, this happens sometimes when you're writing books, especially coming out of COVID. Isn't it even like a little bit weirder? Like things are behind and with my one publisher, no, they've been absolutely fantastic
through COVID. The only problem I had was being able to do research, going places and getting pictures and talking to people. That was the biggest challenge.
That was hard, right?
But the publishing was just like always.
Do you have a website people can go to?
Yes, brianclune.com.
Well, make it a little bit harder than that.
I'm sorry. I'll try and make it a lot longer next time. And one thing that people might find interesting is if you go to my blog, I only have, I think, 5 up right now because it's relatively new. I write under the name Paratraveler, and I have blogs on there designed for people to have their own paranormal weekends at different towns. So in, say, Virginia City, I tell you the hotels to stay in that are haunted, things to do in Virginia City that are haunted, places to eat that are haunted. So you can have your own fun paranormal weekend without having to worry about joining groups and tours and everything else.
What an excellent idea.
Yeah, I thought it was fun.
Okay, one last question. Most haunted location you've ever been to? Ever?
A place that no longer exists, unfortunately. That would be Wolf Manor. But second would be Alcatraz. So I highly recommend everybody take the night tour of Alcatraz and see what transpires. The activity there was off the chart.
Yeah, I have not. Every time I've been to San Francisco, Alcatraz has been closed for one reason or another.
Oh, no, you have to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Finding your doppelganger at a restaurant or party might be fun in games. You snap a pic, show it off on social media, but would you feel the same way if you came across them in a dark alley, alone, at night? Thank you for listening to this episode of Haunting History Podcast. We love hearing from you, so be sure to like, follow, and comment on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Haunting History Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to all your favorites.
Visit our website at hauntinghistorypodcast.com for more information on each episode, links to our Patreon page, and all of our social media platforms.
Until next time, I'm Kat.
I'm Haley.
Remember, the living are far scarier than any ghost.
Margot felt quite exquisite as she dipped her fries in mayo, gracefully extending her pinky to the sky. See, she had just saved by getting Cox Mobile for her family. Yes, more lines, more savings, Margot. Brilliant. She finished her cherry slush drink with a triumphant... Exquisite indeed. Visit a Cox store and pay as low as $30 a line for 4 or more unlimited lines. 4 lines required for $30 per line price, max of 5 lines. Prices exclude taxes, device activation, and other fees and charges. Other restrictions apply.
Hey parents, Greenlight is here to take one big thing off your to-do list, teaching your kids about money. With a Greenlight debit card and money app of their own, kids and teens learn to earn, save, and invest. You can send money instantly, set flexible controls, and get real-time notifications of your kids' money activity, set up chores, and put allowance on autopilot to reward them for their hard work. Then learn about the world of money together. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.